My parents were immigrants. They came from Austria, Poland. At the beginning of the century, they met here and married. And most of the immigrants coming from Eastern Europe, the Jews, settled on the Lower East Side. I was the oldest. I was born 1912. Living in New York, and this part of New York, was very colorful, very lively. They were almost all Jewish in the particular enclave I lived. Young kids wouldn't dare go further from a certain area, otherwise you were either beaten up. I enjoyed that life. We were very poor, but I didn't know any better. It was life. Amongst the Jewish people, there was great intellectual ferment. Theaters and libraries and a lot of talk and a lot of politics. Most of them living in that area were socialists. Actually, we had a socialist congressman. I went to the New York public schools. High school, I went to Seward Park High School on Hester Street. And I really wanted to go to Stuyvesant, fairly close by where all the smart kids went to, but I couldn't get in. I wasn't that smart. Well, I wasn't a bad student, but I wasn't the top of my class. I went to City College. That was a tuition-free college. It was a sort of a poor man's Harvard. It's not easy to get into, and that was one of the fortunate things for me. If it weren't for a tuition-free college, I never would have gone to college. We couldn't afford it at all. I really got a high-quality education there. We had some world-class teachers. I majored in biology and chemistry. I wanted to get into medical school. When I graduated, I applied to several, and I couldn't get into any. This was in 1933. It was a bad time to graduate, especially from City College. Fortunately, although these things are stroke of luck, which I think determined my whole career, I heard of a position to work in a laboratory as a volunteer. What they meant is I got $25 a month. And I applied for the position. I also had a chance to work in a post office for more than $25 a month, but I was offered this position at NYU, the Harriman Research Laboratory. Again, making that choice was very, very crucial to my career. I was a technician then. Dr. K.G. Falk, who was a biochemist, he worked on enzymes in malignant tissues, and I got my first taste of research, just assisting Dr. Falk. After 2 years, I decided to get married. My wife was a student at Hunter College, and we just couldn't live on $25 a month. Fortunately, as an opportunity, the city of New York opened up a laboratory to test vitamins, supplements, vitamins, and foods. It was a non-profit laboratory, and vitamins, this was in the 30s, it was just being developed and became a big thing. My job was to set up assays to measure the vitamins in foods and in pills. I learned a good deal about devising methods, and not only chemical methods, there were microbiological methods using a spectrophotometer. 1945. I was working there for 11 years. It was George B. Wallace. He was a chairman of pharmacology at NYU. And one day, people from an institute for the study of analgesic drugs, this was a consortium of manufacturers selling non-aspirin drugs like acid-aniline and phenacetin. And they came to Dr. Wallace with a problem. Some people became habituated to bromoseltzer, which contained some of these phenacetin or acid-aniline at that time. And they got methemoglobinemia. And they were very concerned, and I wanted to find out why. And Dr. Wallace asked me if I would like to work on this problem. I said, well, I had no experience research at all. So, well, I can send you to one of my associates at NYU, Dr. Bernard Brody. I remember that day. It was a very fateful day for me. It was Lincoln's birthday, February 12th, 1946. Just coming to talking to him, he was a magnetic man, you know. It's a great deal of presence. He had a way of talking and stimulating me. First thing he told me, he says, any time you take any chemical or drug, you ingest it, it's changed in the body. It's metabolized, transformed. I vaguely knew something about it, but I didn't realize the implications. And he asked me to put the structure of acid amylate on the blackboard. Let's look and see what kind of changes this molecule can undergo. Acid amylate was aminobenzene ring with an acetyl group. One is the removal of the acetyl group to form aniline. I vaguely remembered that aniline could cause methemoglobinemia. So one thing I learned right away is to ask the right questions. That was so important. Does acid amylate form aniline? In order to answer that question, you had to develop methods to measure it in the blood and the urine. Between Brody and myself, we developed a method, and when we gave it to patients, we found a small amount of aniline in their blood and the urine. Then I took some aniline myself, acid aniline. I felt I turned blue. No, well, I didn't take that much, but I was a little woozy, but I found a lot of methemoglobinemia in my blood. What we did then is show that there was a direct relationship between the methemoglobinemia, and we did this in animals. Within 3 months, we identified the major metabolic product was N-acetylpyramidophenol. Dr. Brody checked it for analgesic activity. It was just as good as an analgesic as acid amylate. It wasn't toxic. We suggested that it would be used for headaches rather than acid amylate. This was my first paper. They called it acetaminophen. A company sold it, McNeil Company, and it puttered along until Johnson & Johnson bought that company in 1970, and they had a very powerful marketing campaign. They called it Tylenol. What we got for that was a $10,000 grant. That's all we got. But I got much more. I knew I got the beginnings of a research career